Since I have been tutoring GED Academy with CWI, I have found that there are some general tips that all students should follow in order to have success in the program. I will go over those tips in this presentation. So what is GED Academy? It is a study platform that creates customized learning plans based on the skills you need to study. You can study at your own pace. The assigned lessons are based on what you already know and what you need to study. You and the tutor can track your progress, and it is computer-based with additional resources if needed. The first tip is to set a time for your studies. You need to determine which days and time is best for you, and set that on your calendar and keep that appointment with yourself. You should plan at least 30 minutes to an hour per session. Now this can be flexible, but not too much. It's easy to let other things take over, so you need to remember that you must get in an average of 4 hours per week. The attendance warnings go out every 2 weeks, and this will be a time when you will find out if you are close to being dropped because of lack of getting in 4 hours per week. Be sure to let the tutor know if you have conflicts in the week, such as illness, work, vacation. You can have an excused absence. But if there's conflicts that seem to come up all the time, then what you need to do is find a new time in the week to study, not just skip your study time. The single reason that students don't finish their GED is that they're not committed enough and they're not putting in the time. Data in the GED Academy shows that students who spend an hour or less per week end up dropping out or not finishing at all. Those students who put in 2 hours per week, they may stick with the program, but up to a point, it's going to take them over a year to finish, and they may end up having a problem with retention of information before they take the test. We really find that students who put in 4 hours or more per week are able to complete their GED in less than a year. Another tip is to start a notebook for each course and have that notebook with you while you're studying that lesson. This will be invaluable when you're reviewing for your GED test. Take notes during the lesson, and then you can go back and review those notes before you take the quiz and the unit quizzes and even the practice tests. It's just like regular school. Study for the quiz, study for the practice test, study for the GED test, and your notes will help. You can pause a lesson while you're going through a lesson and use the transcript, follow that transcript to write down your notes. You can also use the menu headings as headings in your notebook. It's usually a good idea to pick 1 or 2 courses to focus on when you begin your studies. You might ask yourself, which is your best subject? Or what I often recommend is to do the reading language arts test first, because if you can pass the reading language, which is reading and content area, then it's very possible that you will be able to pass the social studies and the science, because those are reading and content area. It's always good to get your first GED test finished. It's great motivation. But if you need variety, go ahead and study 3 subjects at a time. However, I found that students who have passed all GED tests seem to study 1 course intensely at a time, pass that test, and then go on to the next. In GED Academy, there are 4 practice tests per course. The practice tests are used at the beginning of GED Academy to determine what your level is and what you really need to study. And then as you're studying, each area that is passed, like you move from pre-GED to GED prep, you are asked to take another practice test to see if in fact you have improved your knowledge, if you are ready to take the test. Here on this slide, I'm showing what it looks like in a practice test overview, and you can click on your homeroom on practice tests and you will see an overview of the practice tests you have taken at this point. And then let's say you really want to see which kind of questions you answered or did not answer correctly. You just click on the details of that practice test and then it will give you the answered and unanswered questions. And this is a good place to also study because you can find out, well, which questions are you getting incorrect? When you click on an incorrect question, it will give you the answer that you provided, but it will also give you the correct answer. So this is a good place for review as you're going on through the units and finding out what else do you need to work on for your studies. Remember, the practice tests do set up your learning plan. It's only recommended that you take a practice test when it automatically comes up in the next lesson or unit or when your tutor assigns it. We don't want you to be taking practice tests over and over because eventually you're taking the same test and eventually you're going to remember what the answers are, but that does not necessarily mean you have the knowledge of that particular question. Practice tests will determine what you know and what you need to study more of. Like I said, you can use the practice test as a review, and here I'm showing an example of where a student has gone in and clicked on the details of the practice test and then the questions that were answered or the questions that were not answered correctly. And here it gives the student the actual question and it gives the explanation of why it was wrong. So use your practice test to review questions that you've missed and note your progress from one practice test to the next. You want to see that that score is increasing. Another tip is to use the test out option. If you'll look here on this slide and it says the learning plan unit science basics, down below the start lesson button you'll see it says think you've got it, try the test out for science basics. This is really good to use at first of the studying of a new unit, and you may find out that you do well enough to skip that unit. If not, if you don't do well enough, then it will automatically start you in the lessons in that unit. There's no need to try to test out in an option if you know you don't understand the topic. For example, maybe it's math, algebra, expressions, and you know that that's not a topic you have an understanding of. So don't waste your time on the test out option at that point. You also need to remember that mastery of a lesson, a skill, is a 75 or higher score. If your score is under 75, usually that would be a 70 and below, you should retake the lesson before moving forward. I also check students' work and see where they're at, and if I see that a student has scored 75 or lower than 75, I will send additional resources that may help the student on understanding that specific topic. Also, use the review tab. If you do score below 75, a topic, a lesson will come up under the review tab. Also, if you don't pass a unit, the actual lessons will come up on the review tab. And you should go there, click on the review tab, and retake the lesson. I mentioned about using a notebook. Also here I'm talking about on the lessons how you would use the transcript. You see here, I have a lesson up here, and you'll see the transcript, and you'll also see the resources. Always be sure to read the resources that are used in the lesson. Do not skip over the resources. You can save these to your computer, and you can make copies of them and place them in your notebook. The next tip I have is how to make the most out of your quizzes. There are quizzes after each lesson, and there are unit quizzes. Be sure to finish the entire quiz. If the quiz is not finished, you may not be able to move on to the next lesson. And also, that lesson topic will then show up in your skills mastery as a skill not mastered. So the skill mastery is where I look up to see if a student has progressed enough to take the GED test. So on the quizzes, you can move on if you get 100% on the first 3 questions. However, I believe it's best to go ahead and complete all of the questions for your best retention. It's just a good reminder showing you've got it, you understand it. If you have missed a question, and maybe it's only a question missed and you're going to still pass the lesson, do review the missed question. Like this example here, it shows that the answer was incorrect, it explains why, and then you can click on review and it will take you back to part of the lesson where they went over that topic. Again, redo a lesson if the score is below 75, and don't move forward until you have mastered the lesson. When it's time for you to do a unit quiz, I recommend that you review your notes in your notebook before you take the unit quiz, just like how it is in school, a little bit of review and studying before a test. Once you do a unit quiz, if you have a failing score, and that would be below 75, you are required to redo the review lessons, and they will show up on your review tab. There is a way that you can skip the unit quiz if it does seem to be stuck. I've had some students get stuck on unit quizzes after they failed it once and they took it a second time and passed. So if this happens, check with me and I can give you some instructions on how to get by to pass it so we don't have to have you get frustrated with it. Don't just retake the quiz to raise your score if you have a lower score. Do review the lessons first. The reason you have the low score is you didn't master the topic. And you need to have this mastery in order to retain the information and eventually pass your GED. So do review the lessons that come up as needed. It's a good idea for you as a student to keep track of your progress. Now in GED Academy, the courses are broken into 3 categories: pre-GED, GED Prep, and some of the courses have advanced GED. So pre-GED is getting started with the basics, and it's basically review of what you need to remember, what you need to know. GED Prep is more in-depth, and once this level is completed, most students are ready to schedule their GED test. The advanced GED lessons are not required to pass the test, but some of those questions will be on the test. These topics, however, are good to study if the student is planning on going on to college when finished with their GED studies, or it will be extra review for you in that particular course. Passing these topics can lead to a higher score on GED tests, and also a high score on GED tests can be an opportunity for scholarships. Also on this section of your homeroom page, you'll see the estimated time to pass. And this is based on the remaining the remaining lessons in the level. The estimated time to pass here is not based on how much time you're putting in for studying. So for example, this student, it looks like less than an hour to pass. But if you're studying far less than an hour a week, then it's going to take you longer. To be successful in GED Academy, take advantage of the resources. I usually send additional resources to students if their scores on a lesson are less than 75. So when you get those resources, be sure to open them up in your email message, use them, practice them, and so forth. The other thing that I will do is set up individual sessions if a student needs extra help. Some of the sessions I've set up are testing help, like maybe you get nervous during a test and you need some help on that, or even going over specific topics in math and reading and science and so forth. I can do individual Zoom sessions, or I have actually personally met with students, or we will talk on the phone. There are other resources, My Open Math, which you can study extra on your math, and social studies and science, I believe, at this time. And also, if you're familiar with Khan Academy, you can use this as an additional resource. However, let me know if you are using Khan Academy so that you can list me as a tutor, and then I can give you extra time for studying. We now have the Essential Skills workbooks available for GED Academy students to check out from the lab. This is a good option if you may be struggling in a particular course area and need extra help. Be sure to check with me about checking out a workbook. I can give you time spent in the workbook, but I have to know which lessons you're completing and how long you took to work on those lessons. You can also purchase these on your own by going to Amazon.com. Also, you will notice that in the lessons, if a student is needing, they're working on the lesson and there's a particular page in a Essential Skills workbook, it will list it on that learning plan. For example, here it shows that this lesson on percents has material in the Essential Skills Math, Essential Skills Math on pages 60 through 66. So this is a good extra resource that you can use. And once again, I want to mention, if you need some extra help, don't be afraid to ask. You can schedule a face-to-face meeting with me. We can go over a topic. We can have Zoom meeting together. So do ask for help if you need extra help. In order to receive study time for watching this PowerPoint, you need to complete a short quiz which was sent to you with this PowerPoint. And then you can send the completed quiz back to me, and I will give you the study time for the PowerPoint. So this concludes this presentation on how to get the most out of GED Academy.